Welcome back to Legitimate Targets, everybody. I hope you're all having a great day. There is so much Russophobia that is guiding Western policy on this seemingly endless proxy war against the Russian Federation today that I thought we should discuss how this actually all began. And we've had some guests on in the past that have discussed the history of Russophobia and where this all started. But I think today's guest, excellent guest, is going to help us break down where it really started. And we're going to go way back in history. And we're also going to discuss some of the recent events from this week out of Russia. Obviously, big news with the Ukrainian terror attack on Russian railways and air bases this week. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome in Guy Mitton, who is a Swiss journalist, politician, and author, who served as editor-in-chief of Tribune de Geneva and executive director of the Geneva Press Club until 2019. He was a member of the Christian Democratic People's Party of Switzerland before becoming a member of the Swiss People's Party, and served as a politician in the Geneva Cantonal Parliament from 1994 to 2001. Mr. Mitton, thank you for joining me. How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. I am happy to speak with you. I think it's also an important topic by these days. Russophobia.
Yeah. I agree. And that's why when my producer sent me that you'd written about the Great Schism of 1054 and how this served as the precipice of what we now witness today. It really, it makes a lot of sense. It didn't really catch me by surprise, but I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this. Well, how do you see this, the Great Schism, as one of the defining moments that has led us to the point we're in today?
I think it's a very long story, Russophobia. I mean, in the history, in our history of the European continent, but also for me personally. Because 23 years ago, I started to think about this topic when, if you remember, there was a plane crash with the Bashkirian Airlines, who crashed in Überlingen between Germany and Switzerland. And 72 children, Russian children, were killed during this crash. And all the media here in Germany and Switzerland, they wrote, without knowing anything about the reasons of the crash, in the hours following the crash, they started to write, that's the fault of the Russian pilots, They were drunken, they didn't understand English. The plane was not well maintained, the maintenance was not good. So accusing Russian pilots, Russian company of being guilty of this crash. And after that, a few days and a few weeks after that, the inquiry showed that it was not at all the fault of the Russian pilots or company, but it was the guilty were the Swiss guys who were, the air guides,
the air traffic controllers.
Exactly, the traffic controllers. So that was this kind of reflex, immediately accusing Russian to be guilty for Russian crash without knowing anything, about the real facts. And it was very disturbing for me, and I tried to, but that's a problem. Why it's so? Why to have such a behavior, And that's since 25 years, I started this reflection about Russophobia. And in 2014, after the Maidan coup d'etat, and after the Donbass problems and so on, also I saw immediately the same kind of reflex, same kind of behavior in the media. And I said myself, but I have to understand why it's so. And that's why I started my book and my investigation about the history of Russophobia. And during that, I discovered that it was a very old story, starting, as you say, 1,000 years ago, when the religious schism between, let's say, Orthodox Oriental Christians based in Constantinople, in Byzantium, and the Roman Catholics started. And so I was also surprised. Just an anecdote. I am a Catholic, a Roman Catholic. My father, my family, they are Christian Roman Catholics. And when I was at the school, I was always taught that the guilt for the schism was not the Christian Roman Catholic, but was the Orthodox. I was taught that the Orthodox were the culprits for the schism, were the schismatics when But when I made my own research, I discovered this was completely propaganda. Since 1,000 years installed and in the heads, of all the, let's say, the European pupils and children and students, but it's completely wrong. In fact, the real schismatic were the Catholic, not the Orthodox. It was the Catholic who decided to be separated from the, let's say, the historical traditional Christendom with Orthodox. And so all these kind of things we can say are based on false, a distortion of the historical facts. And that's why we can say that's a very long story. It's very deeply, rooted in the Western minds and very difficult to destroy this kind, to change these minds. And now, with the actual tensions, political tensions, it has exploded, but yeah, that's the historical. We can speak now about the actual Russophobia, but that's another story.
Why do you think they still teach that though today? I mean, we're long past a point where any sort of propaganda about the schism would have
I think
very
now,
large, political impacts. Why do you think
yeah,
they still teach that?
I think now, the religion is less important than before, and the
Yeah.
religious origins of the Russophobia are more or less forgotten. But it's still, let's say, it's still a print, in the heads and in the way of thinking of the Western scholars, Western academics, and Western media. Now it has, let's say, it has been modernized, if we can say, this kind of religious prejudices, religious cliches, and wrong thinkings. And but the same, let's say, archetypes are still applied now, because when the religious propagandists, I mean the propaganda fide, the people in Rome who were writing in the Roman Catholic Church in order to discredit the Orthodox, they used the same argument. They said, "Oh, but these Oriental Orthodox, they are barbarians. They are not civilized. They are not civilized. They are, they come from the outskirts, outside of the civilized world, and so that's barbarian. We have not to consider them." First arguments. It's exactly the same which is written against Russians today in the today's media in the West. First topic. Secondly, but these barbarians, they will conquer us. They will the goal in the life is to conquer us, is to invade us. So we have to declare, to prevent war, to prevent their invasion. And that's exactly the same argument we can say now in Ukraine and so on. So it's funny, let's say like that. It's tragic, in fact, but it's a little bit comical to say how these repeated arguments are recycled, in the long distance of history. And now the problem is I wrote recently an article for the Italian media about the present Russophobia to explain it's a racism. It's a racism. It's like anti-Semitism. It's like Islamophobia. It's like it's a form of racism because, the culture, the Russian culture cancellation, the cancellation of the Russian music, the Russian theater, the Russian literature here in the West, it's exactly the same practice as the Nazis adopted against the Jews during the 30s, when they burned the Jewish literature, the Jewish science, scientific contribution and books. So we are in the same type of racism, but it's not said, it's not recognized, and in that sense, it's a very bad thing.
How does Russophobia manifest in Switzerland today? Because a lot of the guests I've spoken to from Europe are from Germany, from France, from some from Slovakia, Serbia. But, in Western Europe, it's pretty bad. The propaganda, the United Kingdom, it's pretty bad. In Switzerland, how is the public and how captured is the political class to this propaganda?
Yeah, unfortunately, the Swiss, it's a little bit less, let's say, tough than in other countries because our society is a little bit different, and we have, for instance, in Switzerland, the Russian media are not cancelled. There is no censorship officially. It's hard to get them, but officially it's not. There is no censorship, as it is the case in European Union members. So there are small differences, let's say like that. But the mainstream thinking, the mainstream behavior coming from the politicians or from the media are exactly the same. For instance, this morning we have a lot of articles in the media saying that former Swiss agents, let's say, spying agency, one of the guy has collaborated with Russia, furnishing Russia with informations and news, so he was a traitor and so on. So it's completely fake. It was because the information came not from Switzerland, but from European secret services saying, oh, but you had the guy, he wrote with Kaspersky in the year, so he should have given to Kaspersky some information, secret information. So it's all bullshit, but it's the headlines of the media today, coming from, we are picking in, fake information from outside and making, big deal with that. So that's the let's say the mindset now. Now I am not so pessimistic, let's say like that, for Switzerland, because we have a popular initiative, a people's initiative, asking for coming back to the strict neutrality, to the traditional neutrality. As you know, Swiss neutrality has been broken in 2022 when our government adopted the sanctions, the unilateral sanction of the Western world against Russia. Now there is this initiative. Next year we will vote about that. And I am pretty optimistic that the Swiss people, is attached to the neutrality, to the traditional, neutrality. And there is a chance we could come back to the former neutrality and rebuild something more, let's say, more sane, more, more convenient, and also righter than now. Because, yes, as I can say, the public opinion here is very attached to real neutrality, not as we say, as it is said officially, kind of cooperative neutrality, which doesn't mean anything, in fact.
Yeah. So what I've seen, obviously Switzerland, not a NATO member, but they've provided financial aid, a lot of financial aid to Ukraine. Do you think if this were to turn into a conflict between NATO and Russia, a hot conflict, which would presumably be World War III, do you think that Switzerland would continue to maintain the low level of supports that they're giving to Ukraine, or do you think maybe we'd see a very active and engaged Switzerland towards Ukraine?
No, yes, there is a support here for Ukraine, but for the moment, it has been more humanitarian support and also refugee support, which can be understood. I mean, it's not in contradiction with traditional neutrality, and I think it could be accepted, even with some limits in my view. But okay, for me, it's pretty okay for that. What is not so good and I mean tricky, that's the collaboration. That's the hidden collaboration with NATO. Because we, as a neutral country, we cannot be a member of NATO. But we can do as it was done in Ukraine before 2022. It's NATO. We are not member of NATO, but NATO is in Ukraine. As NATO, we are Switzerland is not member of NATO, but NATO is in Switzerland. That's it could be like that. Mm-hmm. And I am very concerned. It's a big concern for me that the development of ties and tighter ties between Switzerland and NATO could, in fact, bring to a situation that we are not officially member, but we are a real member. I'm not sure now, because of this popular initiative, our government should be cautious. But because it has at least to wait for the popular vote, for the popular decision, otherwise it will be very difficult, and it will bring water for the partisans like me. We are supporters of a strict neutrality. So they are pretty careful until now. But the problem could be worse after the vote if the Switzerland reject the initiative. I don't think so, as I said. But that's a hot debate here, and I think it will be hotter and hotter in the coming months, because probably there will be huge amounts of money poured to persuade people to vote against, the neutrality initiative. So the campaign will be pretty tough, I am sure. But I remain optimistic. Yeah.
What did you make of the situation over the last week where you had this Ukrainian drone attack on Russian air bases as well as civilian passenger trains? Yeah. You said that the situation in Switzerland is going to become tougher and tougher to hold that semi-neutral line. Do you think that we will see further escalation here in this conflict? And do you think that will impact the question of whether or not neutrality will remain in Switzerland?
Yeah, but it depends of the reaction of Russian reaction. But for me, I think until now, if we look during these past 3 years, Russian reaction will be there anyway. There will be a reaction, but by chance, you know, the Russian government is keeps cool, and don't you know is not emotional as it is the case in the Western countries. So that's why I think, in fact, we there will, even if the reaction will be tough, we will not enter into World War III, let's say. I don't think so, because thanks, yes, to the coolness, let's say like that, of the Russian authorities. It's our chance, I have to say. Now, it's a real problem. These terrorist attacks against the nuclear, against the Russian planes and the civil infrastructure such as railways, bridges, and trains, it's really a big matter of preoccupation. And I think in this case, Ukraine has crossed a red line. But, and what is also a little, for me, let's say, reassuring, is that also the US government, Mr. Trump, has not overreacted to that. And he seems to have recognized that the Ukrainians have overcrossed the red lines. And I think there is a chance to keep the things, not to derail, hopefully. And maybe it could be a good coup, let's say, because it was a tactical, let's say, good operation for the Ukrainian side. But it could be at the midterm and long term, it could play against the Ukraine, because normally the political leaders, and especially the Americans and Trump's team, now they see the Ukrainians that are able to do anything and to cross all the red lines in order to attract us in a trap, in order to make provocations, and hoping these provocations will provoke an escalation of the war. But by chance, American and Russian, let's say, leaders are trying to keep the things a little bit more, let's say, constrained, not to enter in this game, dangerous game.
Well, it's definitely a dangerous game. We've seen nothing really but efforts at escalating the conflict and refusing to negotiate from Ukraine since this all began. You think that what we just saw, I mean, they said it took 1.5 years to plan this operation, and they decide at a time when things look like they're headed towards peace. Russian and Ukrainian delegations are in Istanbul. Trump is pushing for peace, allegedly, that you have this happen. You think that this was all about trying to escalate and stop any efforts that are headed towards peace?
No, in my view, the Ukrainians will try by all means to try to provoke escalations, as we have seen these last days. And maybe they have other operations in preparation, we don't know, but probably, in my view, because that's also the way of doing of the British, because for me, it's the Brits who are behind this operation, because by themselves, the Ukrainians are not able to organize such attacks, terrorist attacks. But seeing that, yes, the US leaders and the Russian leaders don't accept to be trapped in this kind of provoked escalation, there is a chance for further negotiations. Because now I never thought these negotiations will be done, achieved in 2 days or in 2 weeks or even in 2 months, because we are in a type of conflict which is a little bit, they have parallels with the Vietnam War. During the Vietnam War for 50 years ago, we had many protagonists, many actors. We had the South Vietnam, North Vietnam, we have the Viet Cong, we have the Chinese, the Soviets, the Americans. So many actors, So the negotiation at that time, they lasted 5 years. They started in 1968 and they were finished in 1973. And during this time, the conflict has escalated. We have forgotten that. But if you remember, when the negotiation started, the conflict didn't calm. It was worse and worse. For instance, the Americans, they tried to get a better hand, and that's why Nixon and Kissinger, they bombed Laos and Cambodia. So it was a big escalation because everybody was trying to improve his game. That's the same case now. Ukrainians are trying any kind of escalation in order to improve, in fact, a bad game because they have bad cards. That's why they organize such attacks. But as far as it's not so easy because if I was in Russia, I would be very upset by all these attacks. But as the Russian leaders are understanding, this kind of mechanism, they are keeping cool. They will react because they have to do something, but they will keep the negotiations. Let go the negotiation in order, because I think that's the only way to do, and it's the only way to win at the end, because the winner will be present at the last day of negotiation, not at the first day.
Well, hopefully that day comes very soon. Guy Maton, thank you so much for
we hope so.
Joining me. Where should people follow along with you on social media or online to stay up to date with your work if they want to check out what you're up to?
Yeah, but I write mainly in French because my mother language is French. So I publish my articles. I write every week columns for various platforms, but mainly in French. Some are translated into English. So it's for instance, Arrêt sur Info, it's French names. This Italian platform, also pluralia.com and arrêtsurinfo.com.ch, sorry. So this kind of thing, and Facebook, the traditional networks here, LinkedIn and other social media here. And sometimes, yes, it is published in United States in other language, in Romania or Italy or others. No, I try. It's important, to also to be present, because after 10 years writing articles about Russia, Russophobia, and the change in the world, the BRICS, and I was in China twice this last year. I think it's important too. I can observe, even I speak from my place in Western world, because I'm in small minority. I have no more access in mainstream media because I'm not officially banned, but factually banned by the mainstream media. Even in my former newspaper, I was director and editor-in-chief. It's hard now to publish even an article, even once a year. So, but it's very important, to be present on the social media, because you have lots of people, they don't speak, they remain silent, They are a little bit careful, but there are hundreds of thousands of people, trying to know more. They are not satisfied with the official information, and that they try to get, alternative information based on facts, not on propaganda. And I can say, if I see the reactions I receive, the mails, the likes, the invitation for conferences, and so on, this movement is slowly growing. And that's another reason for optimism. Optimism, yeah, for me.
I agree with you entirely there. Guy Maton, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you, Jason. And yes, congratulations for your work. We are still struggling for the truth.